Good evening, everyone. It is June 25th. We're here for a work session of the City Council. We'll begin with public comment on non-agenda items. If any member of the public wishes to speak to the council on an item that's not on our agenda this evening, go ahead and just come forward in the room. Seeing no public comment at this time, I will close that public comment. We're going to open our work session parking enforcement update, and I will recognize the city manager.
Thank you. Mayor, while the chief is getting ready for the presentation and the fire department folks, or excuse me, working on the fire department before I came in here, but we're actually going to talk about police department and their presentation first. So with that, Chief Brown.
Welcome, Chief. Thanks for being here.
Mayor, Council, thanks for having me. Let's see here. Okay, so this is actually our second enforcement update since I've been here. Last year we had an opportunity to give an update. One of our community service officers, Robert Austin, gave the presentation. Tonight I'll be giving the presentation. So I'll begin with recognizing one of our interns. If you look in the packet that was provided for council, there was a 15-page document, and it was a summary document summarizing some of the issues that we have downtown, looking at some of the fee schedules, and also coming up with some recommendations. So every so often we're lucky enough to get an intern at the police department, and even less so often, those interns are really, really phenomenal, and they have the ability to bring a skill set to our organization that we otherwise may not have had. I have the honor of having two of them here tonight. Brandon will present here in a second after we're done, but the other one is Aaron, and Brandon last year had the opportunity to help us write the ordinance for the police advisory board, which you heard ad nauseum about, and now we're having board meetings. It's been up and running in a very successful process. And this packet was put together by Aaron, so I'm going to allow him to come up and introduce himself, but I really wanted to take a second to recognize him. He put together a phenomenal document. When I met with him the first time, I probably spent about 20 minutes giving him somewhat of a direction before I was on to another meeting or doing something else that I was called to do. And he really took the task that we gave him and ran with it. And he spent several weeks researching this issue, researching what other communities were doing, similar sized communities, and also going out with me to the downtown area and contacting businesses. So Aaron, I'll let him come up and introduce himself and kind of talk about his degree field and what he's doing at the university. Come on up, Aaron.
Aaron, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. My name is Aaron Giacoletto. I'm from Cody, but I've been living here in Laramie for 3 going on 4 years now, I think. I've earned my bachelor's degree in criminal justice. With my master's, I'm currently studying in public administration with a concentration in criminal justice. So I don't know how much you want me to go into the document now or afterwards. I'll hold off on it. I don't want to take Chief Brown's thunder at all. I'd hate to do that to him, but I'm grateful for the opportunity to serve in the community in this capacity.
Thank you, Aaron. And I might have called you Austin, and I apologize for that if I did, but thank you.
Very good.
Oh, good.
So I'll reiterate in the beginning that the 15-page document is very detailed, and we spent a lot of time kind of fine-tuning that document to make sure that the information was appropriate for our community. So I will reference that at points, but I highly suggest that if you have the opportunity, council and also the community, to take a look at that document and kind of see where we're at as a community with our downtown parking area needs and issues. So our community service officers are primarily responsible to responding to calls for service in our downtown area. Last year, as we'll get to in a second, or this year, currently I believe we have approximately 72 calls for service downtown that they've responded to. As you'll hear more about in a second, it's a very unique situation for our officers to respond to calls for service downtown for parking issues because there's a 2-hour time ordinance. So oftentimes by the time we get the call, those vehicles have already been there for a significant amount of time, often over 2 hours. But per the statute, we have to go down there and do a visible marking on the tire. And what we've heard from some of the residents and some of the business owners in the area is that oftentimes people parked in those locations will see us coming or see our truck in the area, and they kind of let each other know that we're down there. And once we mark the tires, they have another 2 hours to move the vehicle. So frequently we're seeing them move the vehicles. And due to the other duties that you see up here, event inspections, primary parking enforcement for our agency, traffic collisions, fleet management, they have a lot of duties. They respond to a lot of calls for service. So it's very difficult to have somebody down in the downtown area 24 hours a day. Did I break it?
I touched you.
Okay, gotcha. So these are some of the businesses that we went out and talked to. We made an attempt to contact as many businesses as we could, me and my team. It wasn't just me. These are the majority of the ones that I personally contacted with. There's a few here in the audience. I believe the Spectacle Emporium, I was unable to get up there. Linda Devine and her businesses. I talked to Mr. Brett Glass and his manager for his complex there I spoke to. Wild West Creations, and just about every employee as frequently as I could get breakfast at Jay's Prairie Rose I spoke to regarding the parking issues. And then one of our lieutenants was also out there frequently, and I know that she spoke with representatives from Dodds and also some of the salons in the area. So we did try to get as many representation from as many businesses downtown as we could. And my philosophy behind that was I knew we were doing a survey, so you're kind of going to get hit with this huge barrage of information, but I really wanted to do face-to-face contact with these employees, many of who, employees and business owners and residents, many of who were here during the apartment complex discussion, because they have real on-the-ground information that I might not be able to pull out of data. And while data gives us a snapshot, in some areas it may not in others. So these are some of the things we heard, and if I'm being honest, I probably spent 20 minutes to maybe at times 2 hours at different locations. So this is a snapshot of some of the things that we heard, but there's a lot more. But I think that there's these are the ones that I pulled aside that I think we could probably help to do some issues with. The first one is that the majority of the business owners that I spoke with did not feel like visitors are violating the 2-hour ordinance. And what I found, speaking with other communities who have downtown areas, other law enforcement officials and business owners here, is that typically when visitors come to our community and they see a 2-hour restriction, they comply with that because they don't know what's next. It could be a $100 fine, it could be a $200 fine, it could be towing their vehicle, putting a boot on their vehicle, which is all different solutions that you see in other communities across the nation. So realistically, they don't know that they're going to get a $10 ticket if they park for more than 2 hours. However, what we find is that most of the residents downtown, and a lot of the employees and even some of the business owners do know that, and that kind of contributes to is why they're parking for longer than 2 hours. At least that's the speculation between myself and the business owners. Most visitors expect to walk a couple blocks. I think the business owners, by and large, it really depended on the type of business that they had, the type of clientele that they catered to, and what their needs were. We saw very different needs from the restaurant employees and ownership groups than we saw from the smaller business groups. We saw some of the businesses catering to an elderly community where there's a need for additional ADA parking spaces and additional handicap parking spaces. And then you have bars that I won't say that they didn't care as much, but they definitely didn't have that exact same need. More on-street parking would benefit local businesses, and I had an opportunity to talk to Director Webb regarding a 2019 study that they had done with some diagonal parking that could potentially be beneficial and add some parking spaces downtown. That included some one-way streets. I reviewed that presentation, and it seemed like a viable option, but I'll stay away from the planning side as much as I can because that is not my area of expertise. And then almost everyone I spoke to really did not see a $10 violation as a deterrent. And when we went back and looked at our fee schedule, we have citations from 2002 with the same $10 fee. And if you just look at inflation over the years, $10 is not enough to deter people from parking in that area. In fact, I actually spoke with 2 different employees who I had a business owner identify their vehicles as being there frequently, and I actually marked some of those vehicles myself and ended up identifying those people and went and had a conversation with them. And one of them, actually two of them, but one of them had told me specifically that they received $30 in citations last year and they'd happily pay that to park in front of their business. So $10 is, in my opinion, is simply not a deterrent. So these are some of our calls for service. You'll see year-to-date, 295 calls for service, and it's pretty consistent if you look year over year and what we're seeing with the parking data. And we pulled our two primary highest calls for service volumes. Permit parking is down this year because we've seen that in the past, a huge issue in that area, and we really have asked our CSOs to focus on that area. And as you can see, the results are evident. I will say, having our CSOs focus on that area is way easier than the downtown issue, because they can go there, see somebody in violation, and issue a citation. They don't have to mark the tires, come back 2 hours later. Coming back 2 hours later, they could be on a traffic collision, they could be on another call for service, where they just don't have the ability to get back in that area at that time. So it's a much easier ordinance to enforce. And then our abandoned vehicles is our second highest calls for service. So year to date, so by and large, the residential permit areas are our highest call volume, and it's a bigger area. That's why it's not as red as the downtown area. I think I'll show you here in a second. The downtown area, we had approximately 72 calls for service, mostly related to overtime parking. And one of the things that I reiterated with the business owners when we spoke with them is we want them to call us. We want people to see us down there. We want to know what cars are down there. That doesn't necessarily mean that we'll be available to respond as soon as they call, but we'll do our best to get there as soon as possible. And this is just a different map showing calls for service. This is where we pulled the heat map from. And you can see the two biggest high volume areas are the residential parking issues area near the university, and then also the downtown parking area. And there's kind of this perception amongst business owners, for sure, that we're not enforcing enough. And I can tell you, my perception is that we just don't have the ability to enforce as much as we should or as much as we'd like. And part of that is because I really feel like the 2-hour time ordinance kind of handcuffs us, because it's such a huge block of time for our people to be back and forth down there. Whereas in other calls, as I said before, they can go down there and issue a ticket as soon as they see the violation. But we are out there enforcing parking issues. Some of the big ones that I've received calls for service on this year or complaints on has really been abandoned vehicles, trailer parking, and then residential parking. But you can see with the addition of our second CSO at the end of 2022, you can really see our numbers start to rise. So this is some of the revenue that we're bringing in through parking tickets. We are not a for-profit organization. We are not sending our code enforcement officers out there to operate, to bring money to the city. That is not their function. Their function is to make sure that, by and large, our community is complying with parking-related issues. And when you look at the numbers, there's some pretty sizable numbers there as far as what we're collecting, what we're still uncollected fines. When you look across the board at most communities, the expectation or a good collection rate is between 70 and 80%. And we've been there pretty consistently. We're a little bit lower than that right now, but we usually see an uptick at the end of the year when people start paying their fines. And then there's some added considerations as to whether or not we're going to have a warrant issued after they receive 5 violations that they haven't paid for, which we'll talk about again here in a second. So these are our agency totals, and this is per violation. It's a little bit hard to see, but if you pull it up on your computers, you'll be able to zoom in on some of the numbers. But it just kind of gives you a more detailed explanation as to what type of violations we're seeing out in the community. And this is for last year, and if you look at towards the bottom of the page, you'll see 213 sites for overtime parking. So last year we started receiving complaints. I actually went out there last year, met with some of the business owners, and then we requested additional enforcement for our CSOs. So you see that number really skyrocket towards the end of last year. It jumps up to about 213 sites over the year. And then this year we've seen a drastic drop, even though our CSOs are spending more time downtown. And I think part of the reason for that is you're starting to see people recognize our trucks, realize that our guys are down there marking tires, and then moving their vehicles when it's appropriate to do so, or they feel like they need to before they get cited. And this is the total parking issues that we've had issued in 2023. And when you look at the 74%, that's the residential parking. The residential parking permits or violations, I still think the $50 is not enough of a deterrent down there. And you can see that by the amount of citations that we're still issuing. And I've been told by numerous community members and also our CSOs who have talked to numerous people who they've issued these violations to is that it's still significantly cheaper to pay the $50 ticket even multiple times than to pay for a parking pass at the university. So I think that that's another area that we can improve on and maybe look at those fees also. By and large, the residential parking permit violations are not residents of Laramie. For the most part, they're the transient college community coming in and paying a lower fee and essentially impacting our community in a negative way instead of paying the fees that the university requires. So this is our current ordinance. We're going to have a few recommendations here. I'll kind of rip the Band-Aid off. My recommendation is to change the $10 minimum to a $40 minimum. And I think that's consistent with other communities that we're seeing. For the most part, most of these violations that we're seeing are not necessarily Laramie residents. And the ones that we are seeing that are Laramie residents are actually telling us the reason we're continuing with these violations is because it's only $10. It's a cheap violation. We actually had one person tell us last week that they had to run to City Hall because it was their 5th day and they wanted to get that paid $10 instead of $20 for parking in front of their business, and they got a citation. So moving forward, my recommendation is to increase the fee schedule to $40 for all of our $10 violations, $75 to $100 for our residential violations, $150 for our hydrant violations. That's a public safety issue potentially for people parking in those areas. And I had changed this new bond schedule recommendation, data monitoring recommendation, AI recommendation on how to fix the issues downtown. And I changed it multiple times after talking with business owners and kind of trying to get a better idea for what the issue is. And I think the simplest solution that may work is an increased fine schedule downtown for the overtime parking. So I would recommend a $40 first-time violation within 12 months, an $80 second-time violation within 12 months, and a $120 violation for every subsequent violation after the third one, or the third one following. And I think what that does is it really is something that we can do an advertising campaign with our downtown partners and really make sure that the community downtown is aware of the increased fines and that we will be enforcing those fines. And hopefully that's enough of a deterrent, at least to get rid of the perceived issues of employees and residents parking in those storefront parking areas. I did have an opportunity to talk with an apartment manager who brought up another issue that their residents don't have parking places at their location. I believe there's about 80 units downtown. And working with the city manager in her office, I think that there's a pathway forward to maybe create some residential parking in some of the off-city parking lots, where right now there's not 24-hour parking allowed in those areas or overnight parking allowed in those areas. So maybe a residential permit down there for the residents so they can continue parking in those areas and they have a place to park. So I think there's some solutions moving forward, but I think the easiest solution is simply increasing the fine schedule and seeing what type of impact that has. Monitoring the data and continue to do what we're doing with our enforcement, while also looking at some AI-related technology. There's some neat AI technology out there as far as geofencing parking spaces, license plate readers, app-based systems similar to what the university does with Park Mobile. And there's a lot of different vendors out there. And my biggest concern is always making sure that's the right fit for our community, and then combining that with the costs associated with the project, because some of those costs are significant. Of course, most of the vendors we've talked to said that it would pay for itself in citation revenue. Whether or not that's the case, I think it kind of remains to be seen. But I think there's some opportunity for some unique pilot programs out there that we could also test drive in this time. So, but I'll leave those recommendations up to council, and I'm excited to hear your conversation. So some possible incomes, so I kind of made this recommendation last year. We talked about an increase for personnel and maybe putting someone down there full-time. My concern with this solution is I don't know that it's the right solution for our community. I look at our CSO position, and even before when we used to have meters downtown, and my concern with that is having another full-time city employee for our department down there enforcing parking needs, when there's a lot of need in the city in different departments that need employees for various services for the city. So if there's an AI-related issue that we can look at, or a solution that we can look at, or maybe simply raising the fee schedule is a solution, I think that it would be prudent to look at those first. And then leveraging new technology. So all of these are things that I've talked about. This year, some of the recommendations that we had last year, we actually do have a new automated ticket writing software that we're waiting to roll out with Tyler. It's been backlogged a little bit because of the ERP rollout. But we're hoping to have that out in the next month or two. That'll make it more efficient for our CSOs to write citations. So it's a good opportunity for us. And that's the presentation we have for you tonight. So I'd be open to any questions, and thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Councilors, any questions for Chief? Councilor Richardson, Councilor Gabriel next.
Thank you for the presentation. One question I have is, do we know the cost for a UW parking pass?
I believe last year I was looking into mine, I want to say it was over $500. I want to say it was roughly $550, but don't quote me on that, but in that ballpark.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Gabriel, please.
This might be for the city manager. I'm not sure, Chief, if you know the question or the answer to, you mentioned 80 downtown residential units, correct?
That's what I was told. I haven't confirmed that
So
with Derek.
maybe 1 or 2, 3 cars per resident. I'm just wondering, would the lots at 1st and 4th and University be possible solutions to residential parking downtown?
Mayor, through you, this is something I visited with the chief about, because a number of years ago, well, not a number, a couple of years ago, I should say, I did make an offer to one of our downtown landlords that I thought there was the potential for the city to partner with the landlords to try to find a solution for long-term off-site parking. At the numbers that you state, Councilor Gabriel, though, say 2 or 3 cars per unit, I don't think that's feasible, but absolutely, we discussed the city's lot at 4th and University. The chief has mentioned that as well. Right now, we opened that up for public parking many years ago, but not 24-hour. And so what we had envisioned, or what I had envisioned, I guess, a few years ago, is maybe some sort of voucher program or parking pass program, 1 car per tenancy or something. But there is potential, absolutely, but it will require those private landlords and property owners to work with the city, and probably still to limit the parking of their tenants. And they won't, I can't foresee a situation where we could be handing out 2 or 3 or 4 parking passes per unit. But we could accommodate the need to be able to park for more than 24 hours within a, say, 5 to 6 block radius of the core 2 blocks of downtown, I believe.
And how many parking spaces are available at 4th and 1st? Do you know offhand?
At 4th and University, I don't know, but I would guess it's about 80. And of course, we use that for employee parking during the day, so we wouldn't want to completely eliminate that, I would suspect. But there's creative opportunities. And one thing I've talked over the years with Main Street about as well is we have lots of private parking lots downtown that sit idle in the evenings. And so, there's a lot of public-private partnership opportunity if we have willing parties on both sides.
Thank you, Councilor Gabriel. Other questions, council members? Chief, I was curious if you all, to Councilor Gabriel's point, have looked into maybe some sort of parking pass that would allow a resident, because we've had conversations about housing in downtown, but might allow somebody who actually has a lease downtown to have a parking pass that allows them sort of an exemption to the 2-hour. And that may be a bad idea. I'm asking because if it's a bad idea, I'd sure like to hear that. But I was curious about that as well, because I can imagine that maybe like if you lived sort of like in the southern part of downtown, 4th and Ivanson out here, or 4th and University is not a compelling place to park, right? If it's a 7-block walk or something with your laundry or groceries, it's not really what you're going to do, probably. So curious about that.
Mayor, so I can talk to the conversations that I had, even with the residents. By and large, I don't think that's what they're looking for, is to have an exemption to the 2-hour parking limit, and I don't think that's what the business owners would want. I think what they would prefer, based on the conversations I had, is to set up some type of loading zone where they have an opportunity to park for 15 to 30 minutes, unload groceries, laundry, whatever it is, and then have an opportunity to have a location where they can park their car safely overnight.
Yeah, that seems like a great solution, Chief. And I wondered about, I had a note about loading zones as an option too, because they make sense in every block, and I've had similar conversations with folks downtown. Any other questions on the enforcement piece? I would just say maybe I'm favorable to this increase in price with this sort of sliding scale up. I wondered about, because we have recognized already, and you mentioned that it is not necessarily visitors who are violating this. I'm not sure that like the PR effort should be facing sort of outward, right? We shouldn't be trying to tell folks that are driving in to visit about this enforcement, because they're going to largely rely on the signs and realize, like, from, you know, their community probably enforces with a $40 or $80 fine. So we should find a way to sort of directly target business owners and tenants in downtown. I think that's probably, I imagine the folks that are here in the room are not the folks that we need to target with this, because they probably don't spend a lot of time parked in front of their business. But we all know, because we're in downtown all the time, there are plenty of business owners parking in front of their businesses, and certainly employees. So if we could find a way to target directly folks living downtown, and then employees and owners, I think that would be meaningful. Maybe we wouldn't see a huge spike in the sort of revenue. We would just see a drop in tickets, which would be ideal, right?
Mayor, yes, and I had an opportunity to meet with both the director of Main Street and the chair of the DDA, and really run this idea kind of by them. And I think they were in agreement they'd be a great resource to kind of get that word out to our local business owners and employees.
Thank you, Chief. Others? Okay. Thank you, Chief.
I did have one, Mayor,
Please.
if it's permissible. I did have one other recommendation that I forgot to mention. I would also like the council to consider moving away from issuing warrants after the 5th citation and look at some other type of deterrent, like maybe a boot system, or there's a product out there called a barnacle that goes on the windshield. And my concern with the warrant system as it sits today after that 5th citation, update citation, especially with being so heavily focused on our residential parking permit issue, area, we are having a lot of students violate that 5th, 6th, 7th parking citation or receive that parking citation. And oftentimes the registered owners of those vehicles might not be the student, it could be a parent. So, and I also think that we're likely to gain compliance and also parking fee payments when they're unable to move their vehicle unless they call us and pay the fine, as compared to issuing a warrant for a parent who might unknowingly have a student park in their car illegally.
Thank you, Chief. Yeah, Councilor Pierce.
Yeah, thanks. Have you given any consideration to towing? And what are your thoughts?
Through you, Mayor? Yes, but there's a pretty significant cost here, especially in Laramie with towing. It's not a set ordinance. This is something that the city manager and I have spoken about and looked at coming up with a proposal, and they actually had one written before that I was reviewing. And it's very challenging here because of the low number of tow companies that we have, which might sound odd, but there is actually for a community this size. And to burden a citizen with another additional tow charge and then oftentimes storage charge. I think that the boot or barnacle, which we'll do more research on before we bring it to you, might be a better option, a cheaper option for sure.
Yeah, I get that with our towing situation here in town. What I worry about with the boot, and maybe I don't understand the boot, is you put it on and there it sits, right? So you're not actually freeing up any parking. So if there's some way we could transport, I mean, I don't know, but the whole goal is to get them out of there, right? So I don't know how you do it without towing.
Through you, Mayor. So I can work with the city attorney on that, on guiding the ordinance as to what he thinks is appropriate and legally permissible. Some of the ordinance I've seen is if there's a boot on for more than 3 days, then they'll tow the vehicle at that point. I think 72 hours is the lowest I've seen. I've seen up to 7 days. So I think that could definitely be an option.
Well, and I think there's statute, I mean, I know this sounds crazy, but I remember reading sometime that the city cannot engage in the towing business. Am I right? But the county could, if I remember reading correctly. So there might be partnership opportunities for specific, I don't know. I mean, I'm just kind of spitballing ideas that aren't so financially onerous as a huge towing and storage, et cetera, bill.
And through you, Mayor, since I've been here, I haven't received one call with somebody who's called to complain of residential permit. We've gone out and issued a citation, and that car has continued to be there. So I would be surprised if vehicles are there for more than 24, 30, or 48, 72 hours. I just haven't seen any evidence of that. I think by and large what we're seeing evidence of is as soon as they're parked illegally, we're getting a call for service, we're going out there issuing a citation, and the vehicle's gone within roughly, I would estimate 6 to 12 hours, the length of a school day, I would assume.
Okay.
Councilor Doherty, please.
I've noted, I guess there's no law against parking a vehicle with an expired tag on the street. Seems like that should be not legal because, I mean, I've seen plenty of them on Harney, not so much now because of the yellow curbs, but, I mean, there were cars that the licenses were expired or the tags were expired years before, and they sat there even after complaints. So I don't know what the standing of that is.
Yeah, through you, Mayor. So we use expired tags to look at an abandoned vehicle as part of our probable cause to tow that vehicle for being abandoned. I actually looked at the statutes in Casper and a couple other cities. Casper is the one that stuck out to me to see if there's anything consistent with a parked vehicle having expired tags. And there wasn't anything that I saw. So I can look into that deeper and see if there's potential for a violation just for the expired tags on a city street. The other issue that we run into a lot is a lot of our calls for service are expired tags on private property where they're parked in their own driveway or sometimes even parked on a lawn or they have multiple vehicles or the legacy license plate. We've had some calls on that. There's some unique statute behind that one too. Yeah.
Thank you, Chief. Councilor Richardson, please.
Another question, this is kind of a one-off, and I don't think directed to you, Chief, but during the lot discussion, there was, I received a few emails anyway about people feeling like there's a lack of handicap parking downtown. Has that been evaluated lately, and has it been looked into? I know AARP had offered to do kind of a walking tour of downtown to like look at those sorts of things. Has that happened through the Disabilities Commission?
City Manager.
Oh, yeah, thank you, sorry. But I'm sorry, ignore that.
Go ahead, City Manager or Chief, if one of you has an answer there.
Mayor and Councilor Richardson, we do have a map of parking downtown. We understand where it is. We're going to talk a little bit about handicap parking because some of the survey questions we developed were around handicap parking, its use, its utilization, I should say. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. It might answer your questions. If not, maybe after the survey results presentation, we could talk a little bit more on that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Doherty, please.
I think if you have loading zones, that's a handy way if you're dropping off someone with a disability that can't get around, and if they can get off somewhere, and I think that would improve some. And the Laramie Advisory Commission on Disabilities is interested in that walk, and we've discussed it some with Mr. Webb, but we haven't done that yet.
Thank you. Councilor Newman?
I do like the fee schedule because if you remember the first time we talked about it, I said I would just pay the $10. There's no way I'm paying 40, 80, and then 120. So I do like that. And then the AI or app-based, that'd be something good to look into as well. So.
Thank you, Councilor. Other questions, comments, council members? And Councilor Pierce, please go ahead.
So you're going to take comments now, too?
I was going to ask the city manager, our work session is just parking enforcement update. I was going to ask if there was, I see we have some of our engineering staff here. I don't know if the conversation is intended to expand out to engineering options and other parking-related things.
Thank you for asking that question, Mayor. We did talk a few weeks ago about whether we would have the time, sort of with short notice, to add that element. We do not have any preparation around changes to downtown parking for you tonight, but we did ask about in the survey what the public might like to see to sort of help inform your decision-making going forward.
Thank you, City Manager, and I suspect members of the public will be pretty interested in that as well. I think this is really, the work session we're having is valuable, but I do think folks will have a desire to see some of those changes be presented and likely come to fruition. So any other questions then for the chief, council members? To Councilor Newman's point about the app-based things, I just think as we do that, we should be pretty conscientious of sort of like, we removed parking meters because they were a barrier, and there's already sort of like, it is just easier to shop online, right? There's just like, you can do it anywhere. So I think we should be really conscientious of anything we do that places like even a small hurdle between people parking and getting into a business. So if they are illegally parking for multiple hours, they're asking for it at that point. So that's maybe different, but I would just be cautious as we go into it, that maybe somebody would not want to spend 10 minutes figuring out an app when they park downtown, and they may just, go elsewhere. So I think we should be quite cautious as we move into that, but I can see some solutions maybe benefiting, at least in the parking enforcement end of things, just maybe caution as we inch towards parking meters or something of this sort, is my opinion. All right, council members, if we've got nothing else, I'm just going to turn it over to the public, hear from folks there. Everybody okay? Chief, anything you want to add before we do that?
No, I just want to say thank you for your time, and then also for the community members who are here in attendance. Phenomenal business group down there. They were a joy to talk to, so I really appreciate them taking their time to talk to me about the issue at hand, so thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Yeah, we share that opinion. Councilor Richardson, please.
Question. So based on this conversation, is the idea to move forward with something that would increase those fees and then temporary parking, or like next steps for council?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would expect the staff will bring back an ordinance to modify the parking fees. My understanding of council is that nobody objected to the chief's recommendation, so I would believe it would be that.
Great, thank you.
Is that correct, Chief?
Through you, Mayor, yes. I've already had these conversations with Holly. We're hoping to bring some ordinances forward late August, early September.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Newman?
I just wanted to specify, the app would be good for like overnight parking or something, not like the 10 minutes or 30 minutes downtown, so.
Yeah, thank you, Councilor Newman.
Not something we have to use all the time.
Yeah, I think I did this a couple of weeks ago where I said something and referenced you and made it, I painted your words differently, so I apologize for doing that twice because it wasn't on purpose. Councilor Pierce.
Yeah, and in terms of the app, I thought I heard the chief mention as part of an enforcement tool, not necessarily like, maybe I'm hearing council wrong. So if we could have some sort of vetting of whatever's out there, I don't know, to help with enforcement, to kind of ease and kind of eliminate the community officers there, so let's all move our cars over one spot, kind of thing. That would be good. I don't know if that's possible, but that would really be good.
Through you, Mayor, so there's two options that we've been looking at. One of it is an app-based system similar to what they have at the university, where you would actually have to physically sign up for the app and register your vehicle. A second option is, as AI continually is growing and exploding in our country, there's some vendors out there that are actually creating geofences via cameras and reading license plates over a parking space. They're creating a geofence around the parking spaces, and then the camera is doing all of the enforcement. So there's no registration, there's no app-based system. It's literally just a camera watching the parking space. Someone pulls it in there, the clock starts, it goes for approximately 2 hours. If you're over that, then a third-party vendor issues a citation to that person. So it's some unique technology coming out in this area.
Thank you, Chief. Okay.
Yeah, it would be nice to experiment a little.
Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. All right, we'll turn it over to the public. I have Norbert Kriebel first. Oh, City Manager, sorry, Norbert.
okay.
City Manager, one thing to add? We'll
Well, I was
get
going
to you
to say,
soon.
we're not done with the work session.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's your pleasure, Mayor, but yeah, we still have material to present.
City Manager, is it on the same topic, the enforcement? Okay.
Well, I mean, it is around the area of enforcement and what people would like to see. We
Okay.
considered it one topic.
Okay, please just, let's get through that, and then we'll go on to the public. Sorry for the false start, everyone.
That's okay, that's okay. So I'll kind of explain the background while Brandon gets ready to make the presentation of the data. So Main Street, in the last month, since we've been talking a lot in the community about parking downtown, has suggested a survey of the community to get a better understanding of community and business concerns on a broad-based, in a broad-based way. So the City Manager's Office has been working with Main Street. We put out a survey, jointly developed that, and delivered it to the public through our city surveying tool. Mr. Moen, management analyst in my office, will present the survey results. The survey closed at 11:59 p.m. on Friday, so this is very current data gathered in the last 3 to 4 weeks. And we asked questions surrounding the major issues that were raised before you about a month and a half ago, surrounding downtown parking specifically, and enforcement of it as well. Brandon?
Mr. Moen, welcome.
Thank you. So we began this survey on May 31st. We ran it 3 weeks and it ended on Friday at 11:59 p.m. In total, we had 836 submissions started. Any submission with one response dropped it down to 701. So we had a lot of people, I think, click in and then click right back out. But just to give you a little bit of insight into how that number stacks up, 701 responses, according to our 2020 census data, would be about equivalent to 2.23% of the Laramie population. That's a very statistically valid sample. I think we're very happy with the total participation here. It's far higher than our other Zen City surveys have gathered. Completions, 695. So as you can see, between one response and completions, we had about 99.14%. Completion rate, 83%. That was far higher than our budget survey completion rate. As you can see, 68.72%. I think we're pretty happy with that. We did identify some ballot box stuffers. That's a term we've been using, stuffing the ballot box. We did some research. We pulled out their, Zen City has a very cool feature where they'll pull out digital fingerprints as well as IP hashes in order to see exactly who took it. You don't have any identifying information. It's encrypted, but you can see if there are any repeats. We identified a few. They weren't statistically significant. We found that it didn't skew the data in any way, so we think that this is valid data. High turnout in the first few days. We saw that the engagements dropped over time. They did spike when the city or Laramie Main Street put out ads, and then as you can see, that's the case. The first question, inquires about your association with downtown. As you can see, overwhelmingly they are consumers, 80%. About 15% work at or own a downtown business. So we saw that about 9% were business owners and a little over 6% were employees. We had very few residents respond. There were about 2% that provided an other or an open field response. Those were typically a combination. So maybe a consumer or business owner or a resident employee, things like that. So those were their own demographic there, about 2%. How often do you typically visit downtown was a question we asked. There were 0% that said never, so downtown does bring in everyone. Rarely was about 4%. We saw that 50% visit at least multiple times a week, 15% visit daily, and about 80% visit at least multiple times per month. As far as accessing downtown, and you'll also see, I'm probably blowing through this a little quickly, but you'll see that we did include how many of the total completions did answer each question. Some of them do drop a little bit in their response rate, so I wanted to be sure we show where these rates may drop a little bit on these questions. Nearly all participants drive their own personal vehicle. We saw about 7% walk or bike downtown, and then 2 respondents use rideshare or none use public transit. So some small things to note there. As far as finding parking downtown, the most common choice there was driving around until they find a spot. So a lot of patients going around until they find the spot they're looking for. We did find that there was a little bit more spread for parking in a lot and walking to their destination that was more towards the 2nd and 3rd rank. We did find that on-street parking was consistent across the top 3. Private or attached lots were a lot less common, and then we found that not taking a vehicle downtown is also pretty uncommon. People are typically taking those personal vehicles, as we saw previously. Typical parking times, we found that 90% take less than 10 minutes to find parking. We found that about 50% indicated it takes them less than 5 minutes to find parking. We found a little under 2% do not drive downtown, and about 7% take longer than 10 minutes to find parking. And there is a little bit of interesting data there I will provide in a couple slides. As far as reasonable walking distance, we did find that about 72% of respondents would walk 2 blocks or less, 40% would walk 3 blocks or less, and about 19% would walk 4 blocks. 9% would walk further than 4 blocks. Again, not driving downtown is a very small demographic, and then we see that less than a block is about a low percentage there, a little under 7, and then 1 block is about 20%. As far as ADA parking usage goes, we did find that about 90% of respondents indicated it was not applicable. It was about an even split between not applicable and never. I do fear that there may have been a little confusion on that question between it not being applicable and never using it. That's something we may want to word a little better in the future. About 7% of the respondents did use ADA often or very often, and then 3% used it rarely. And speaking of that time to find parking, we did find that ADA users, when cross-tabulated with time to find parking, it does take ADA users longer to find their parking spots. We included an ADA parking pin map in order to inquire where some of the most helpful ADA parking spots are located. We do have a map there. We can provide that in a different way. We can pull out those coordinates through Zen City and potentially add it into GIS or other options like that. But we did find that there were 23 parking spots pinned. We also gave survey takers the option to provide a description on this map. They did indicate that close proximity to the location, to the destination, is the most popular reason for why they chose these parking spots, and then availability was the second most common, making sure that they are able to acquire that spot. As far as the biggest parking issues downtown consumers, business owners, everyone experienced, we found that parking in a desired proximity to their destination was the largest issue, followed by a lack of on-street parking stalls. The third most common option was snow impeding ability to park or access the sidewalk, and that was very closely followed by not encountering issues parking downtown, which was a relatively chosen option. We did find that not parking inadequate loading zones was a also commonly chosen option. So yeah, we can see that there. As far as improvements to parking indicated by respondents, we found that the most common option was more off-street parking options. That is the preference of most respondents. On-street parking through the use of diagonal parking in one-ways was the second most popular option. Following pretty closely behind there, just around 45%. Least common were not driving downtown, more time-limited loading, unloading zones, and enhanced safety features. There were 118 comments suggesting other options for improvements. Some of the most common suggestions there were free parking garages as opposed to the paid option provided in the survey, employees or business owners not parking on downtown streets, increased parking fines, and increased bike infrastructure. As far as parking limits go, we inquired from a 0 to 24-hour scale how citizens would like to see time limits enforced or regulated downtown. We found that 2 hours was overwhelmingly the most common, followed by 3 hours and then 4 hours. There were a couple other options that were selected rarely, but as you can see, those were the 3 most common in a pretty linear fashion. As far as parking enforcement goes downtown, we found that there was a 24%, about 25%, roughly a quarter found that it was about right on enforcement. About 35% found it was not strict enough, and the majority, about 37%, found that they were not sure, did not have an opinion on this topic, and under 5% found it to be too strict. As far as parking for business owners and employees, we provided 2 statements and asked respondents their opinion on these statements. On-street parking is for customers. 42, about 43% strongly agreed with that sentiment. 31% agreed, indicating that about, 73% agreed in some fashion that on-street parking should be specifically for customers. We found that disagreeers were about 10%, with disagree being 7% and strongly disagreeing being 3%. There were very few that had no opinion. We found very similar outcomes as far as employees should be parking in a private spot where they work or use the all-day lots and walk to their place of work. Very similar results there. Strongly agree was largely the majority. And then agreeers were closely following in second. We then inquired 2 questions to downtown business owners, one of which asking, if you are a business owner, what is the maximum number of employees you have at any given time, not including yourself? We received 50 responses from business owners. We received 645 indicating they were not business owners, and for that reason they were omitted from this just because that's information we understand. The majority have 1 through 5 employees, and it decreases as that number increases. So 11 through 20 was about 6 through 10 was about 7 of the respondents, 14%, 6 through 7, 11 through 20, wow, numbers are hard today. 11 through 20 was 5 respondents for 10%, and then more than 20, we found only 2 businesses indicated they have more than 20 employees at any time downtown. We found that a majority of business owners don't feel that there is adequate parking on a Monday through Friday business day. We found that not far behind, there was wow, that number is real dark. About 21 respondents found that yes, there was enough adequate parking, and 2 respondents indicated that they are not sure. As far as parking improvement proposals, we asked 1 final question asking for respondents to just provide open field responses saying what they would like to see done with downtown parking. Some of the most common responses were the same as they were at the previous question, asking for improvements. Increased enforcement of regulations was common. Parking garages, paid or free, were very commonly requested. Improved accessibility, both through snow clearance and ADA parking, were very commonly requested. And then alternative transportation, bikeability, walkability, alternative forms of transportation beyond a personal vehicle. We gathered follow-up contact information. We asked respondents if they'd like to provide an email for us to follow up with updates or survey results and things like that. We captured 158 emails. They will be receiving updates as we have this condensed and ready to send out. We can also consider creating a project hub through Zen City in which it will be a centralized link, providing updates, providing surveys in the future, just a project hub in general that can be ongoing and continue to exist as we work through this. Survey considerations, we did have excellent engagement with 15% higher than the budget survey. That is something that I think we are all very excited about. We developed paper copies, none were requested, but they were available at City Hall, and we have been working to continue to make that possible with Zen City software. We've talked to our rep to ensure that that's something we can do with that software, so that's something we are focused on. We did find that downtown Laramie and City of Laramie ads directly correlated to spikes in engagement engagement as we saw earlier. Finally, as that attrition is, we did find that most of those incomplete surveys were never received a response. So that's something we are going to explore and try and figure out. But for the majority, anyone who responded, just about everyone finished. So reducing that attrition rate before taking any of the questions is going to be key in making sure this is done the most efficient way possible. And with that, I would be happy to stand for questioning.
Thank you, Mr. Moan. Council members, any questions on this part?
A comment.
Yeah, go ahead. Comments are great.
I don't know how this has anything to do with parking enforcement. This is an update on how to fix parking and the survey, so for me, it's not clashing what we advertised, what our work session was about. I'm having a real hard time problem with that, and that's just my comment.
Thank you, council member. Other comments or questions? All right. Councilor Pierce?
So I guess my question is, given the businesses, and we know roughly how many employees at one time, excluding and including the owners, and we know how many parking spots we actually have that are at the ends of downtown, and potentially our lot over here, which is east, how many are we short, I guess, is the question. If we could get the employees and the owners to use the lots at the north and the south end of downtown, and, I mean, how many actual spots roughly are we short? And if we don't include any of the spots for ADA and a loading zone and that are actually downtown where someone not affiliated, not living there, not working there, could actually pull in and park and go into the business. Do we know about how many spots we need?
Mayor, through you, Councilor Pierce. So a couple of things. We have talked about parking. I bet we've had 6 work sessions on parking in the last 3 years, and most of it tied to downtown Laramie. Part of the reason that this survey asked about the public's attention to, valuation of, and effectiveness of parking enforcement, but expanded beyond that, was, and I'm getting to your question, Councilor Pierce, that we're trying to assess the tolerance of the community for potential solutions. And why? Because we've proposed staff, from the staff to council level, and council also have conceived of parking changes and adjustments to the downtown area many, many, many times over the last few years. And certainly, I've lived here for 30 years. We've talked about parking in this town since I moved here in 1995. So what we did, and why we expanded the survey beyond enforcement, was to try to gauge the solutions that would be tenable to the community broadly, whether it's people who patronize downtown or the business owners and people who live down there. And I'll give you an example. I'm getting to your question. So yes, we have data. We know exactly how many spots are downtown. We know how many spots we could add through, for instance, the work session we had about 3 years ago, where my engineers said to me, just in passing one day, they said, if we made some one-way conversions in the downtown, we could add, I think it was 110 parking spots on street alone. And I thought that was pretty amazing. And so I said, you got to take that to council, and we got to get the Main Street organization in here and have a conversation about this, because we've been talking about parking since 1995, and I had no idea we could add 110 spots, right? And we came in and presented it to council, and it was a bomb, right? So the reason that we are asking questions beyond just enforcement is I know where you're going, right? You want to solve the problem. And I would like to see us all, whether it be me, my staff, your time, or the time of our business owners, property owners, and patrons of downtown, to invest that time wisely and arrive at solutions that are tenable, not spin our wheels and waste our time coming up with solutions that are not. So we do know the exact number of on and off street parking spots. I don't know them off the top of my head, but this work session was to set us up to come back and talk more about the actual nuts and bolts of that. If we're serious as a community about solving the problem, there's a bunch of ways we can do it, but they all have trade-offs, right? And so hopefully this gives us a place to start that's in the realm of possibility.
Thank you, City Manager. Councilor Richardson?
And sorry, are we commenting now too? Okay.
Have at it.
Thank you. I actually appreciate that this survey was included because some of the feedback, or much of the feedback, surrounded or highlighted the need for enforcement and bigger fines, that sort of thing. So I feel like they do kind of tie together. And seeing that feedback from the survey, you know, again, kind of to your point, kind of helps us think about it more broadly and thinking about what community members might want.
Thank you, Councilmember. Other councilors? All right. Thank you, Mr. Moon.
Thank you.
City Manager, before I turn it over to the public, any pieces I'm missing?
Let me just throw this out in way of wrapping this up. So we did ask the questions about ADA because we know that you have a goal related to handicap accessible parking in the community for this calendar year, and also that, as Councilor O'Doherty said, our Disabilities Commission has interest in downtown parking. So we added that in. It's like when you get the attention of the public and they're going to take the time, we better ask them all the questions, right? So we will turn that data over to the Disabilities Commission, and we will figure out how we can use that data to address council's goal. And then we do expect to come back with subsequent work sessions where we can look at actual, some of the engineering design and changes that you've already discussed in the last 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 3 or 4 months, but also be able to contemplate other potential changes that could align with the data that we see here in the feedback we've gotten, or anything else you'd like us to explore.
Thank you, City Manager. All right. We're going to turn it over to the public. We'll begin with Norbert Kriegel. Thanks for your patience, Norbert.
Yeah, no, happily. Honorable Mayor, City Council, as you guys know, I always start from a revenue perspective. So one thing, 2011 downtown development plan, the number one mentioned item in there was parking 91 times, which is 3 times more than any other issue. The 2019 National Main Street Consumer Survey, the number one issue for all age groups over 18 to 24 was parking. So when we have people in here, and I heard in the data that some people are willing to walk 5 blocks, do we know the age range that they're operating in? Why am I talking about this? One of the questions that we're not asking in here is how many people have just decided they're going to shop elsewhere? And I don't mean Walmart, I mean Cheyenne or Fort Collins. Maybe one of the things we need to do in a citizen survey is ask, where do you do most of your spending to get a bigger picture of where is this money going? I'd like that money to be going into our downtown because there's a multiplier effect of those dollars. That's all I'm going to say about that. Now I want to switch over to the enforcement side. I do think we need to have a designated employer, business owner, resident lot that does have different time limits allowed to it because we need to accommodate all these different people downtown. And leave parking available for paying customers. Why paying customers? 15% of revenue in a business comes from having free spots in front of that business, short distance. It's just there. That also represents $20,000 in tax revenue in cities our size for the city itself. So parking is a revenue issue in this. The second thing, this was mentioned before, but I think we need to have a breakout on a given block of different parking areas. I've seen this done by painting curbs a specific color and having a color key instead of signs everywhere that say this amount of time this, but you have a color key. Downside to that is when we have snow, we can't see the curb. But 30-minute load unload on the ends, going towards the middle where you have longer terms. So 1 hour parking for a short trip, 3 to 4 hours for shopping, dining, entertainment. I did have 24 hours plus, but I modified that to say let's put those in external lots where we've got employee and business owner parking. Last piece, I agree with the increase in parking fines. I would leave that as an escalating scale. The boot, I agree, that creates a tremendous cost. Towing, a tremendous cost. That is a boot, uptick. It's not going linear. But if we allow a linear, somebody's going to learn very quickly. So 40, 80, 120, 160. Let it keep going until somebody says, I don't want to park down here anymore. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you for taking time to be here. City Clerk, do we have any other folks that signed up ahead of time? That's all I had on my list, and I think I saw maybe.
That's all that I have.
Okay. So it is now open to anyone who would like to speak. Go ahead and come forward if you would like to speak to the council on this. You'll have 3 minutes. Welcome. We'll just need your name for the record. You have 3
Paul
minutes.
Montoya, 1974 Truman Street. Mayor, City Council, I really appreciate the work Main Street and the city manager's office did on the survey. I also did a little different survey that I did talking to the business owners. I talked to 49 business owners downtown and residents, by the way. And basically, it was a one-question survey. What would you do to improve parking downtown? In order of preference to the people that work downtown and live downtown, the first issue was enforcing the current 2-hour time limit. The second was educating business employees about parking in the all-day parking rather than on the street. Third was improving the existing all-day lot at First and Garfield. And fourth was building a parking garage or at least purchasing the property at First and Garfield. There was also some comments about setting short-term parking, 15 to 30-minute parking in front of businesses. Now, these were the business owners, and it formed what I then took as an online survey and put these issues in, of which I had 312 respondents to it. It was a little bit different order. The number one thing that people wanted to see was either purchasing or building a parking garage at First and Garfield. Second was enforcing the current 2-hour time limits. And third was educating business employees about parking in the free all-day parking. So just a little bit different reference. I think a lot of it does correspond with what the city did as far as their survey, but it's from the perspective of the business owners and residents downtown. It's very rarely that I disagree with Chief Brown, but this is one area I think I will as far as the fine increase. I think $40 is excessive. The reason I say that is I did compare this to the cities that were listed, Cheyenne, Casper, Fort Collins, and UW. And essentially, Cheyenne has a overtime parking fee for first violation of $30. It gets reduced if it's paid within 2 days. Casper has $25 for the first offense. Fort Collins is $0 on the first offense, going to $10 on the second offense, and it's a $26 fine for UW. I think this sends the wrong message that we become the most expensive city to park in. I think the best way to deter parking violations is to enforce the regulations, and we need to give Chief Brown the resources to do that. But I think that should come first. You can incrementally increase those fines if you need to. My recommendation is to take overtime parking to $20, and I know that's only half of what was recommended to you, but I tend to feel if you do $20 and enforce it, you'll have a pretty quick response as to whether that's effective or not. Thank you.
Thank you for taking time to be here, Mr. Montoya. Other members of the public wishing to speak to the council on this item? Hold on, Mr. Hrebel. We just take folks once, but we're going to come back and I'll give you a second shot after everybody else has a first. Mr. Hershey, welcome.
Good evening.
We will need your name for the record.
Hi, my name is Ryan Hershey. I'm a downtown business owner. Thank you, Mayor, council members, and I'd also really like to thank Chief Brown. He's been down in our community talking to us, seeing what our business owner concerns, and really taking the time, and it's deeply appreciated. I pretty much agree with the fine structure that he's proposed. In particular, I really would like to see something done about the fire hydrants, our emergency parking. That gets abused all the time, especially right where I'm at Third and Grand. The one right there on 3rd and Grand by the 3rd Street Bar commonly has somebody parking in that fire zone. That means something to me because my business is right there. I'd like, if there is a fire, for the fire to be able to put out, and I think that we've got to increase those. That $10 fine for parking in a fire zone is just ludicrous. I think that, we really do need to up the enforcement, That said, our CSO, Bob Austin's been down there working hard. He comes down there when we call, but it's one of those things where we're not giving them the effective tools. They're using a piece of chalk. It's 2024. We have all this technology in the world, and we're giving them a piece of chalk. A piece of chalk can be pretty easily defeated. People can come out there and wipe it off with a bar rag. I'm pretty sure one of those guys does that pretty frequently at the 3rd Street Bar. So we need to give them better tools. We need to give them, mechanisms like increased, fines so they can actually make people respect the laws. Thank you for your time. I appreciate your work on this, and have a good night.
Thank you, Mr. Hershey, for taking time to be here. Please, Mr. Grabowski. We will need your name for the record.
Yes, thank you very much, Council and Honorable Mayor. I'm Steve Grabowski, owned a business downtown for 47 years, family in town for almost 150. I want to agree with Ryan there about the chalk business. It does not work. Some of the businesses downtown, honestly, I don't understand where they're coming from. If people can't park, they will not shop. It isn't that they can't, they will not. And that's the number one reason I've ever heard from people, or that they got a ticket downtown. Ticket us business people. I don't know how you can differentiate, but maybe the first fine be small, graduated up after that. The people who are habitual should keep getting it. But you can sit in my business and cooperating businesses and write down license plates all you want. I'll let you in there anytime, and I'll bet Ryan would too, and there's some others here all nodding their heads, right? Make a list and come back. If they're there, they get a ticket, but not uniformed, so they don't know what's happening. And pretty soon, after 1, 2, 3 tickets, it starts skyrocketing. They're going to start behaving themselves. I got 2 tickets in 40-some years, just because I forgot. And at first, somebody told me, look, we got a rule around here. Don't park out on the street in front of your businesses. I didn't even know for 6 months I had a space out back. Mrs. Burbank never told me. But after that, I got caught once or twice, because if somebody's got my space, I have to come in front, open the doors, run around, turn the lights on, go back, lock the door. Once in a while, somebody walks in, and I forget. Twice, I cheerfully paid the ticket. I know somebody who pays tickets of visitors to town who are actually shopping. It says, look, I know you're shopping. Don't worry about it. They don't check them very often, but come back if you get a ticket. I'll cheerfully pay it for you. Been offering this for 20 years, never had a taker yet, because it almost never happens. But I'll tell you what, we have to do something besides the chalk. I know people, they move, they wash them off, and then they come back, and then they aren't recognized. Usually there are 5 to 7 local businesses on my block, parked on my side. That's most of the parking spaces. Find a way around this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Grabowski, for taking time to be here. Any other members of the public wishing to speak to this work session? Welcome. We will just need your name for the record.
I'm Joan Martindale. I own a business downtown. I own my building. Thank you, council members and mayor, for having this meeting. It's really important to downtown. I've worked downtown since 1981. We were gone for 10 years. We had meters. Everybody just plugged the meter. We got rid of the meters, and it's better in a way. The people who do abuse the parking are a lot of the downtown owners and people who work at their businesses. I personally have many tourists who shop in my store all the time, and they're very cognizant of those signs that say 2-hour parking. And they ask me, well, I want to go walk around downtown. I need to move my car. And I actually tell people, if you get a ticket and you're just in the 2-hour parking spot, not in the handicap, I didn't realize handicap was not as expensive. I thought it was more expensive. I tell them, if you're in 2-hour parking and you get a ticket, bring it to me. I will gladly take it to the city and give them $10. And they say, why do you want to do that? And I said, because I want to tell them, thank you for doing your job. I have never had to do that. I've never had to bring money in. So I think that we do need to enforce the parking rules much better, because our city depends on tourism, you know. And I know that I also have a lot of local people. I have ranchers who come to town. I've had ladies come in and tell me, if I have to walk 4 blocks to come to your store, I will never come back, because they see the same cars in front of my store day after day after day, and they're not from my employees. My employees know if they park on the street, they're coming for their last paycheck, because I'm very strict about that. I used to work for somebody who was strict about it, and the person who owned the building where I am now was very strict about it. So a lot of people just, I don't understand their concept that they think that it's okay to park in front of their business or someone else's. To me, it's rude, and I would never do that to anyone. So I think we do need to work on a higher fine. I think it's important to keep the 2-hour parking for the local shoppers and the people who do travel. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Mardell. Any other members of the public wishing to speak to the council? Director Sherwood, thank you for being here.
Hello, thank you for, I'm Trey Sherwood with Laramie Main Street. Thank you for this conversation. I just wanted to put in a shameless plug for our new parking lot characters and our parking lot reveal party. The public is invited to join us, as are all of you, on Saturday, July 27th, starting at 10 o'clock at the Moose Lot. So that's the one at 4th and University. So we're gonna have coffee and donuts, and we're gonna celebrate the improvement to the off-street parking lots in the district, which provide 284 parking spots downtown, and we're going to make sure that it's fun and artistic, and that we get our steps in and walk around the different lots to increase awareness of where those are at and get some public feedback on how they're being used and ways that we can continue to improve parking downtown. So, thank you.
Thank you, Director Sherwood. Other members of the public wishing to speak to the council? All right, Mr. Kriebel, I'll come back to you for a second time, if you're brief.
I will keep this very brief. I'm a knucklehead. Norbert Kriebel, again. The reason why I brought up age, simple reason. Age and disposable income are correlated. That's all I wanted to add. Thank you very much.
That was brief. I think I counted 11 seconds there. Good job. All right. Any other members of the public? Last chance here. Oh. Welcome.
Hello.
We'll need your name for the record.
Yeah, my name is Lori Kirk. I am a resident of downtown, and I own Cowgirl Yarn, so I live above my building. I have lived there since 2015, and I've had my business since 2005. So I'm on Ivinson, so I see a lot through my dining room window on a daily basis. So I just want to say thank you for having this work session and having it before Jubilee Days so that we can start having this conversation. I think the parking ticket should be higher than the $40, but thank you for that increase. And I just want to say thank you, and I would love to have conversations as a resident. I am blessed that I can park in the Big Hollow Co-op parking lot, but I'd like to have other options, and so I only drive my car once a week, so I would love to be able to park someplace else, but I'll be talking to the officer to see where else I can park without getting a ticket, because I have parked at the 4th and University and have gotten some notes on my car from the city. So I'd like to just say that, but thank you very much, and I think we need to do something. Like Joan was saying, I have the tourists come in and they ask about the 2-hour parking, and I do the same thing. If you get a ticket, please give it to me, and they look at me, but they are paying attention to the signs. And basically, I've never seen one, and periodically when I do see a ticket on a vehicle, I do take a picture of it, and it's kind of exciting to see that happening. So anyhow, I'm excited to see what happens this coming year. We've got a great downtown, and people really do want to be here and shop and live. So thank you.
Thank you, Lori. Anyone else? All right. We'll close public comment here. Council members, any comments to make before we close out our work session? Councilor Doherty?
My recollection of the one-way street discussion was that I don't remember it actually us getting to vote on it because the public was so opposed to it. I think there's only so many parking spaces you could put in front of one business, and it was a really good solution. So I am not opposed to bringing that back. I like the idea of increasing the fines if for repeat offenders, rather than hit somebody that just comes to town one time and is there too long. But the people that are just like, hey, it's just my park, you know, what I pay to park, I do like the idea of increasing the fine, and I like the idea of the boot as opposed to the warrant. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Doherty. Any other comments, council members? Councilor Pierce?
Yeah, I agree with Aaron. I also think, you know, to be pretty blunt, it's, you know, pretty despicable, I guess, if you're a downtown business owner and you and your employees are parking in front of other downtown business owners. I mean, and I think I heard that, right? I mean, it wasn't said directly, but that's what I'm hearing. And that, I don't know how that gets fixed, but I don't understand why in the world anybody would do that. I mean, I think it's just despicable. So I'm just gonna say that.
Thank you, Councilor Pierce. Vice Mayor.
Enforcement. I think we have to start enforcing, and we will identify those who are taking up an entire block and leaving none for the businesses. So enforcement. Thank you, Chief, and thank you, Brandon. Very good. I support increasing fees, and for us to further discuss what those fees will be. I could see the use of a boot to eventually get the point across to someone. I would rather see that than towing, the expense of towing and the potential risk to damage to the car. But I think this has been a very helpful discussion. I appreciate the public and your comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Councilor Richardson, please.
Thank you. I kind of to piggyback on, I think I am actually in favor of more in the direction of what Mr. Kriebel suggested with continuing to just amp up that rather than putting the boot on, to your point, Councilwoman Pierce, that if you're putting in a boot, then it's just sitting there and that's taking up a parking spot. So, I mean, maybe at some point we get to that, but I would not be opposed to continuing to, maybe we go a few more times up on that fee before that boot comes on.
Thank you, Councilor. Other comments? I had a few to make. The first was just a general note that I thought maybe the handbill ordinance that we passed recently might be effective here at targeting cars directly with the increased fee. Folks that need to change their behavior, we might find a soft first approach with like sort of a warning that we leave on their car. And not a PD warning, but the ones that are now allowable by the city. And the second point I wanted to make is maybe to encourage the city to look into some sort of parking working group to be sort of like boots on the ground is like a sort of a weird cliche here, but some folks that are you know, some folks that are in the room, right? Some folks that are working downtown, some folks from the city that could service this like really immediate response that we can see the response to our changes without. There's a lot of value in that survey, but without having to go through the process of a second survey. Because some of this is going to be anecdotal, right? Like we all go downtown all the time and we see the same pickup truck parked at the same business all the time, and I would like to see that pickup truck move, but you all are going to see it move before I do, right? And so I think maybe there could be some benefit to having some sort of working group that was really drilling down on this, and then there would be value in that as we have this second conversation about sort of modifications of the sort of like physical space of downtown, whether that be one ways or adding parking at, you know, like where the Clark Street Bridge came down is another, I think, large space that could be pretty dense with parking. But I would like to hear from folks. I mean, I'd hate to spend a bunch of money on the Clark Street area and no one park there because it is sort of distant from parts of downtown. And then this may be, Councilor Newman, you often talk about out of the box thinking, so buckle in, everyone. This is a bit out of the box, but and this may be again a bad idea. But I was curious about. I have often wondered what it would actually look like downtown if business owners and employees and residents were not parking in downtown. Like if we just had a day to see what that looked like without the people, and maybe that's like. Too optimistic to think that could happen, but I wondered about a way of incentivizing folks, like use their own parking. You know, I thought I saw maybe 170,000 that the city has, and I'm sure that's being used for something else. So I know I'm asking to pull things and push them out otherwhere, but I'm wondering about could we incentivize folks to like for one day, just do the thing you know you're supposed to do, and we're going to give you $20 to do it, and. We would then have like maybe a sample of a snapshot in time, and I know it's going to be apples and oranges, and I don't know how you pick the right day. I am not, you know, I don't know a Thursday or a Friday or a Sunday. Like I don't know what the right day is, but I just wonder if we could see what it was like, because I have a hard time gauging the scale of the issue. Like I recognize folks wouldn't keep showing up to council if this wasn't a real issue, but. And if it's been happening, city manager, since 1995, you know, like, who am I to say that that's not an issue? And so I just wonder, like, how big of an issue? And so, like, are we really, I mean, the survey results say we're talking about a very specific group of people, right? Like residents, business owners, and their employees that choose to park downtown are causing all of these issues. And I'd just be curious to see. I know it's not probably feasible, or we, you know, it may look exactly the same because people took $20, didn't park there in the morning and returned after lunch, right? Like, I don't know how we would sort of enforce that, but I was just I was thinking through that, so somebody smarter than me can mull that over for a minute and tell me it's a bad idea later. Councilor Pierce?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how to get to where you're going, but that was kind of my question in general, was how many spots do we actually need that would be for customers compared to if we removed all the ones for owners and employees. So it's, how many do we need for owners and employees? And
one moment, Councilor Pierce. Are we okay, City Clerk? I don't want to violate any public records or anything of the sort.
Mayor, we do have backups, so
okay.
We're okay.
We're okay. Okay, sorry, Councilor Pierce.
Okay, you know, anyway, I mean, that's the question. How many do we actually need for residents, employees, and owners on average, roughly? And how many do we have available? And if the number of residents, employees, and owners could be removed, then what do we have left? Right? If they could be pushed out, right? Out of downtown. I don't know. I mean, I work downtown, not this downtown, but the owner of the business I worked for paid for my parking, not next to his place, like 4 blocks away. So, I mean, it was just a thing. The owners pitched in, and you didn't have to pay as an employee.
Thank you, Councilor Pierce. Councilor Newman is who I saw first, and then Councilor Doherty.
I think your boots to the ground would help you more better than the $20. If we just have people go survey the business owners and to find out how many of them actually park downtown and how many of their employees do, instead of $20, because I probably know some kids that would just come take our $20 and not park there. So, but the working group that I've been, like, my hamster's been trying to work today on, after you said that, what that would look like, and I think that's a good idea that we should run with, maybe a council member and then some of these folks, so.
Thank you, Counselor. Yeah, I think you're probably right. People would take our $20.
It's a good idea. It's a good.
I'm too optimistic sometimes. All right, Counselor Doherty.
I want to point out that I appreciate that the engineers have, there's a heck of a lot more parking now near Clark and Second. The street's pretty narrow, so people with big trucks, if they park at those diagonals, but it slows people down, so it's traffic calming. So anyway, I want to appreciate what the engineering staff, if people haven't noticed, I'm saying this in case anybody from the public sees this, please notice there are a lot more spaces downtown than there were, I don't know, a year ago. So I appreciate all that work. And also, I just want to point out, there seems like the tension that I know from the businesses that I'm friends with down, the places where I eat a lot of chocolate, for example. But the tension between, like, there are businesses that don't care if there's people walking in because they can just sit there all day. So they just get to work and can sit there all day. And then the businesses that require people to walk in. And we know that one of the used to be a big department store downtown, now houses a lot of employees. So it would be nice if we had some alternative parking for them. But I also think, is that the best place to build your business if you have 40 or 50 employees? Because, like, maybe you need a place that has a parking lot. Just a thought. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Counselor. Are there other council members with comments? Counselor Shumway, please.
Your $20 idea is a great idea, but I think we can do it cheaper. AI could read license plates and know very, very quick. I mean, obviously AI is here to stay, but it could tell us who's parking the frequent parkers. It knows, and we'd know who it is, and also eventually it could say who is a resident, who's an employee, who's an owner, and we would have all that data for us to work with. I like the idea of starting it, and I know some of you disagree with this. I like starting at 20 and then going to 40, but tell them very quickly it goes 20, 40, 80, 160. And nobody wants to get to 160, but they may not get their attention with the flyer in their windshield, but they will get it as soon as they pay a $40 fine. And if we start at 40, that's fine. I don't want to run off tourists that get a $20 fine and say, I'm never going back to the downtown. Or even local residents. I don't want to have them stop going downtown because they're starting off with a $40. I don't park at the University of Wyoming. I used to park there all the time, but I don't want to get one of their tickets. And they're very, very good at writing tickets.
They are very good.
They are good at it. Thank you, Councilor Shumway.
Where to park.
Go ahead and let me know, too. You said that on the record. You're going to get a lot of emails. All right. Thank you, Councilor Shumway. Other comments? All right. So I'm going to open this up one more time, and Lori had one, and then Joan, I'll come to you, just by virtue of keeping this.
I can. Lori Kirk, resident business owner. I think with all of us that are here as business owners, we could all tell you who on the block is the habitual. I mean, we could just tell you. I have had a few run-ins with some of my neighbors and have talked to the business owners about their employees not parking in front of my business for 8 hours a day, and it's gotten nasty to the point I felt threatened and had to bring the police in to say, how do I protect myself against this? So I would love to be on this parking commission and help with that, but also at times I did feel for my safety for that. I could tell you right now, the 9 businesses that have employees that park on our end of Ivinson on a daily basis, Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. And we've talked to them. I've been part of the Main Street going and doing the education, giving the flyers. They don't care. So I think with the just being able to ticket is going to be the only way, because we've done it the nice way. We've done the parking ferry. They're not doing it. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, and I appreciate you doing all that work to ensure folks had at least a soft approach at some point to carrot first. Mr. Montoya, Ms. Martindale first. Yeah, it is.
Joan Martindale. I just want to point out, Councilor Member Pierce asked about towing in downtown. Last week specifically, I had a vehicle in front of my store 3 mornings. After the second morning, I called and asked for 2-hour parking enforcement. They came, they wrote a ticket, along with 2 other people who work at a building close to me that are out there all day, every day, as Lori spoke to. On the 3rd morning, I called and asked for 24-hour ordinance to be marked on that one vehicle because it hadn't moved since Monday. So Monday, Tuesday morning it was there, Wednesday morning it was there. They came and marked it and then it miraculously disappeared. So they do have a towing ordinance after it's been there for 24 hours. That can be taken advantage of at this point. I don't know. Do you know, Chief, do they call the person and tell them that they're going to be towed? I don't know how that works because it seems like whenever I call for that 24-hour ordinance to be enforced, that then the car does move, which is great. I should call earlier, but I always try to give people the benefit of the doubt. I do know that that car is downtown a lot, and I have a feeling they live there, that they're a resident. But 3 days in a row, it being in front of my store is really frustrating. So, but they do have that towing ability. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Montoya.
15-second comment. This is to Councilman Shumway's comments about tourists coming to town. What some cities do, and Councilman Gabriel might remember this, is they'll issue to anybody with an out-of-state plate a howdy partner warning ticket, where they won't be fined, but then they get off. And that discourages people from avoiding downtown Laramie in the future. So
thank you.
It might help.
Appreciate that, Mr. Montoya. Yeah, Mr. Grassi, please.
Yes, Steve Grabowski. Mr. Mayor, I like your idea about the $20 reward. Only problem is people who are violating aren't going to admit that they're violating. So I don't know if it'll work or not. And I do know that a lot of us who have tried to talk to our neighbors have been threatened, we've been retaliated, and some people who've talked to parkers have had their tires slashed as a result. Mr. Shumway, I think you had a great idea about the AI. I think there are various ways we could find out who the violators are, and graduated up the idea about out-of-towners maybe getting just a warning might be a good idea. Though some of the everyday violators have Colorado plates in front of my place, but you'd probably find that out pretty quickly. And we do know who they are. I've taken a lot of photos over the years.
Thank you, Mr. Grabowski. All right. Yeah, Mr. Hershey, please.
I'm Ryan Hershey. I'm the guy that had his tire slashed. It was by one of our the upstairs tenants of the building that I'm in. My former property manager of the building that I'm in, she actually promoted to the tenants to violate the parking code. When I moved in, she told me, "Don't worry about those signs." She said, "I've been, parking out there illegally well, she didn't say illegally, but for 17 years," and said, "I've never had a problem." That was one of the things that she told to her tenants. So there's a real core, problem going there. And we have people that are responsible, like myself and most of the other people in this room here. We also have those people that are not, and giving them a carrot's not going to help. We got to use the stick on that. And, when people are threatening other people like us and doing that, they came into my business, harassed me and all that. I ended up taking my firearm out, putting it on the counter. After about 15 minutes of them escalating, raising their voices and that, and told them, well, actually that was after the third time, and told them to leave. They ended up calling down to the police department and filing a complaint on me for coming into my business and harassing me. The police officer that called me up listened to my story and then asked me if I would like to file charges. So we've got these people down there that have feeling so entitled at this point that they're willing to go aggressively at people who just want to see the laws enforced. Giving them a reward will not help. We've got to actually enforce this stuff. And, it's real. I mean, like I said, I had a tire slashed, I ended up, nothing happened with it, but I understand there's nothing we could really prove. There wasn't a camera on it. But we've got to do something. I appreciate your guys' time, but like I said, the carrot thing, it's not going to work, We've tried that. Honestly, the Laramie Main Street, they've been giving out gift certificates, putting them in the parking lots for those people that are obeying that. But those people aren't the problem. It's the people at the other business, and we've got to go after them with a fine. That's the only thing that's going to change it. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Mr. Hirsch. All right. All right, folks, that will bring us to the end of the work session. And I would just say, in closing, thanks to Main Street and all the volunteers that have participated in every effort possible to bring carrots to this conversation. Because, I mean, a lot of work has been put into that, and I think we should recognize that as a council. It does feel like we are approaching more sticks, but I think we can feel okay knowing how many, I'm just going to stick with it, how many carrots have been used to date. So I got myself deeper than I wanted to in that metaphor, but all right, thank you, everybody. So that will close our work session. We're going to go ahead and end that, and I wanted to thank everybody for being here for this one. And we will have more parking work sessions obviously coming up with a bunch of these conversations that have happened this evening, as well as likely an ordinance coming forward with those changes to fees. So we would hope for your engagement there as well. Thank you, everybody. We're going to move on to council updates and council comments. But I'm going to give it 5 minutes. You guys want to stretch? and get back after it once I see we're back in session. All right. We are back in session. We will go around the dais for council comments and updates, and you can just throw them both at once. And we'll start with Councilor Doherty, please.
The Advisory Commission on Disabilities had a booth at Pride in the Park. We had a lot of people come up that we focused on invisible disabilities and had people write on a poster. And I have to tell you that it was kind of depressing because it's obvious a lot of people are suffering. And so I think it's good that we learn and educate about invisible disabilities and the people that may be judging others for parking somewhere because they think, oh, well, that person's physically fit. Why do they have a handicap sticker? And yet there are all these things that you don't know the person could have the POP and, well, epilepsy and things like that where, anyway, so it was good. We had a lot of conversations, and it was also, to me, depressing to know that so many people have invisible disabilities. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Shumway.
Thank you. Traffic Safety Commission met this past week, and they had discussions on Harney and Fifth and what possible improvements can be made there for parking and also safety. There were other discussions, but that was the main focus that we had, Harney and Fifth.
Great. Thank you. Councilor Pierce.
Yeah, a couple meetings coming up this week, Thursday. So the ranch group meets Thursday. So more to come. We're getting pretty darn close to our draft, or our final draft, moving forward with the ranch priority list. And Thursday again is urban renewal, Thursday early evening. So more on that next 2 weeks from now. And I'm trying to think if I forgot anything, which I probably have, but that's all I have for now.
All right. Thank you, Councilor Pierce. City Manager and I attended the Wyoming Community Gas Board meeting this week via Zoom. Not a lot of stuff there's plenty in the weeds stuff to report, but it kind of felt more like an update of sorts from communities and from Wyoming Community Gas, rather than anything sort of actionable that we would need to concern ourselves with. And then the Pilot Hill Board met on Wednesday of last week, and they have not, the date may shift, but I will email you all because they'll be having a groundbreaking for the trailhead at some point, and of course would like council members to show up if they can, and I'll certainly be there. But they're ensuring that they have a qualified bidder before they publicly announce the date. So I'll email you as soon as that's confirmed, so that we can turn out if you can. That's all I have. Vice Mayor, please.
Let's see. Planning Commission met last night, and it was very brief. We had a variance that was removed, but I think the meaningful thing is that Director Tini talked to them about our housing work session, and the Planning Commission is interested in reviewing that entire meeting with our comments, and they plan to do that prior to the next meeting, and then to have discussion to offer us and it's informal, but to offer us their ideas or feedback. But they thought that that was important so that they're on the same page and they know kind of what we're listening to, where we're going, et cetera. The second thing, the city manager and I attended the new Town and Gown Steering Committee meeting today, and I am very happy to say that there's been a complete turnaround since we disbanded the committee, did our study and certification, and have come back together. And there's a new attitude toward making connections, how can we connect? And our talk today, we have divided into briefly subcommittees on traffic, transportation, safety, and the law enforcement is on that, housing, neighborhood relations, mental health and prevention, and economic development. And we discussed our targets, and we want to start presenting and creating alignment and coalitions. So I think it's very exciting. It's turning this into, I think, a meaningful committee. So it's going to have a lot of potential. And the last, and I would invite any of you who want to, you probably got the email from Director Sherwood, but there's going to be a meeting on housing Monday at noon at LCCC, and they will be providing lunch. It's in LCCC room 108. And if you can call Director Sherwood and RSVP, then she is taking that to arrange for lunch. So I encourage any of you to go to that, and it should be very informative. It's going to be a wide representation from different organizations and agencies.
So Albany County LCCC or LCCC?
Yes.
Cheyenne?
In Laramie,
So
Albany County, yes.
Okay.
So right here.
Great.
And room 108. And it's going to be our local group, and we have just a number of agencies and individuals that will be there.
It's Monday.
And it's Monday, room 108. And if you would like to have lunch while you're there, get in touch with Trey. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor, and thank you for all your efforts. It's exciting to hear that Town and Gown is on the rails and doing cool stuff. And you put in a considerable amount of energy to get it there, along with the city manager, so thank you. Councilor Newman.
I don't think I have any. I don't think any of my boards have met.
All right, great. Councilor Richardson.
Just a quick update that LURA reached out to the Downtown Development Authority Chair to see if he might join them to just kind of have a discussion about what's happening with both entities. So that was a good introduction, and now they have assigned Lisa Rich as the liaison for LURA to sit in on some of the DDA meetings, again, to try to keep that kind of connection and making sure folks are working together and not overlapping, and they explored some of the different taxes and how those taxes could be utilized to benefit areas with that in a way that's working together. So,
thank you, Councilor Richardson. Councilor Gabriel.
Thanks, Mayor. Attended the Railroad Depot meeting last week. They're getting ready for the Big Bull steam locomotive. That's coming Sunday at 10:30. And they're going to be in Laramie to pick up some water, but they're not going to be here for very long, about an hour or so. So you might want to head down for the big boy on Sunday. Albany County Tourism Board went to that meeting last week. They're looking for a replacement for Scott Larson, who is moving on to Oregon. So they have a committee set up for that. And they have a couple of people on board in the office that will be applying that are pretty good. So hopefully we might have some consistency continuing with the tourism board, but we'll see what happens with that replacement. And then Councilor Aaron and Joe and I didn't, maybe some of you others attended, but went to Home Base. And
did go shopping.
I was there for a minute.
I was, okay,
Joe
good.
got to watch my daughter run in and out of the room about 1,000 times.
I was thoroughly impressed. Met the owner from Kansas City, talked with him for a little bit, but it was really a very nice store, and we told him how much we appreciated him coming to town, and it was a good open house. I really enjoyed it. That's it.
Thank you, Councilor Gabriel. Yeah, it's hard to imagine the community without it already.
I know.
City Manager?
Mayor, if I could, I thought I'd give you a little update today. As you know, the Wyoming Association of Municipalities is looking for its next director. And Mayor Hall from Cody, who's the current WAM president, had put together a hiring subcommittee, which started work last week. He asked me to sit on that, so we're moving forward to recruit for that position. And I'll try to keep you guys up to date through the process. But important position for the cities, and particularly as we contemplate next legislative session.
Thank you, City Manager, and thank you for serving on that. All right, we will go ahead and wrap that part. Council members, we're on to agenda review. You've got your agenda in front of you. We'll cruise through that really quick. It's a, knock on wood, a reasonably short agenda. Any questions? City Manager.
Mayor, since our meeting yesterday, I just want to draw to your attention, the clerk had sent to you a message this afternoon, but we marked a pretty momentous occasion at the city yesterday, which I would love to, if you would indulge me, remove one proclamation from your agenda and replace it with another to recognize the completion of our lead and copper inventory. Yeah, yesterday the staff conducted the final inspection. So let me tell you what I'd like to do for that. I'd like to invite the whole utilities division down and the project lead team of 5 or 6 people and invite them to receive a proclamation from you and to take a picture with you. It is a lot of people and it will be a pageant, but I think it's really important to recognize that they've been working on this for 2 years. So anyway, I'd love to maybe replace 6A2 with that proclamation because it's just really timely and it's a really big week.
Yeah, we'll just add it, City Manager. We're going to add, but we'll add it about 4 years.
Good try.
We will not take the bait.
We read our facts.
It's a good test, though. All right. But yeah, no, that sounds great, City Manager, the first part. And so we can just add that so we don't, I mean, these are all pretty great, but we can maybe slide what is 6A2 down and insert that one in the middle.
And the people that came to my house, incredibly kind.
Yeah.
And nice.
Right.
And
I was going to say the same thing. They could not have been nicer. They explained everything.
Keep your powder
We
dry,
cajoled for a little bit.
Keep your powder dry. You'll have a chance to say it right to their faces.
All righty.
Thanks. I am just curious, Nancy, I don't see on here, and maybe I'm just not reading well enough, the appointment of Matt to the DDA. We approved that.
It should be item
Am I just missing it?
9N.
9, HIJKLMNN. Thank you. It's right there. I was just missing it. Thank you very much.
Yep.
All right.
And Mayor, I have a question.
Please, and then we'll come to you.
Concerning regular agenda 13.
Yeah.
Is that in conjunction with our work session tomorrow night?
Mayor and council members, no, this is a kind of standard memorandum of understanding that we're just renewing for the year that we've had with Albany County now for, I think, this will be the 3rd or 4th year. So just standard routine business.
Thank you.
Related only in the respect that it is about EMS.
Yes, okay.
And I believe no changes, correct, City Manager, to them? Okay. Councilor Newman?
9C, the bylaws for the Airport Powers Board. Is there a lot of changes, or is there just?
I asked this question in agenda review, and the city attorney said we would receive those bylaws for review and maybe a presentation on those bylaws as well.
So we should pull that and put it on the regular agenda?
My understanding is that the expectation is that we're getting a presentation not as the decision. The decision is here. That's my understanding. And then we will just later receive the bylaws that the board set.
That's kind of backwards, so I would like to
Am I
pull
saying that
this.
incorrectly, City Manager?
They
those
set
bylaws?
their bylaws.
Yeah.
But we approve them. So if I'm not going to approve something I don't see.
City Manager?
Yeah, Nancy, you can go ahead. This is a little different because they are a joint powers board.
Yeah,
They do have the authority to approve changes to their bylaws unilaterally, I believe. And the council is simply acknowledging the change Am I correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we will receive an update on all of those changes.
Before we vote, before this?
You're not allowed, you
Well,
are,
I
you do
understand
not
that.
vote on their
Right.
bylaws. So I don't know at what point, I mean, they'll be attached to your packet, certainly. So on Friday, you'll receive them, obviously. I don't have them yet to tell you about them, so just seems
So just for
backwards.
clarification, we will receive those, sorry, thank you. We will receive those
Yes.
before, okay.
Yeah, but I don't believe we'll get the presentation portion of that.
We'll just
Sort of
have
like the
those.
update from the
Okay,
airport,
thank you.
kind of an
Just
idea.
acknowledging that. We're just acknowledging that.
That they have set their bylaws.
Okay.
Yeah, that's correct. Good question, though.
We can't say yay or nay.
That's my understanding.
Okay, that's
Yeah,
right.
we can't say, no, back to the drawing board,
Right.
folks.
Thank you.
Okay. City Clerk, did you have something to add?
No, that
Oh.
wasn't me. I asked the city attorney the same thing, and
Okay.
he said Jody Shea had, gone over everything, and she didn't believe that either the commissioners or the council had to approve the changes to the bylaws.
Thank you, City Clerk. Yeah. Thank you for helping us through it. All right. Any other questions? And I would say I had asked a question as well about the vac truck, and that is just, it's on the consent agenda, and I just said, well, that seems more expensive than the consent agenda allows. But it is because we've already approved this purchase. It's just a lease agreement for the financing piece. So it is really just a practical matter, not a purchase. So, okay. Other questions? Don't forget tomorrow night at 6, and I will see you all then. We are adjourned.
Thank you.